point, covering circulatory systems, respiratory, and lung capacity and volumes. To start off with, within the human circulatory system, main organ of this is the human heart. Other main parts in the circulatory system include the arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, veins, blood, the lungs, which play a major part in the pulmonary circulatory system. The functions of this is to transport blood around the body. Blood itself carries numerous substances which the body requires to function, such as proteins, fats, sugars. But however, the main substance is oxygen, carried by a protein called hemoglobin, which are found inside red blood vessels. White blood vessels are also vital in their role because they fight diseases and infections. However, too many can be extremely deadly to the human body. Blood contains platelets, which are essential for clotting the blood. This occurs when you have an injury, so to stop the blood constantly weeping out, the blood will clot itself and seal the wound. However, blood also carries a waste product, such as carbon dioxide away from the muscles and organs, which is dispelled by the lungs, as this is poisonous to the body. There are three circulatory phases which occur simultaneously within the body. Firstly, systemic circulation, which carries blood around the body. Pulmonary circulation carries blood to the lungs, and coronary circulation provides the heart with its own blood supply. Systemic circulation, at the start of the blood circulatory cycle, the heart pumps oxygenated blood out of the left ventricle through the aorta, which is the largest artery in the human body. The aorta divides itself into smaller arteries, then arterioles, and finally microscopic capillaries found deep within muscle and organs. Here, the oxygen and other nutrients passes through the capillary walls into tissue where it can be used to produce energy in the muscles required to contract. A waste product of energy production, which is also known as metabolism, is carbon dioxide. In order for this to be removed, it passes across through the walls of the capillaries into the bloodstream. The blood continues back to the heart through the veins and venules into the right atrium. However, to stop it going back through this trap, you have things like the bicuspid valves to stop this happening. Pulmonary circulation, once the blood returns to the heart, it is then pumped from the right ventricle through the pulmonary arteries to the lungs, where the waste product, carbon dioxide, can be expelled and more oxygen collected. Pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood back to the left atrium of the heart, where the cycle starts all over again. Roles. The roles of blood is transport again oxygen around the body, which we just covered, transports the nutrients to the muscles, gets rid of its waste product, and vasoconstriction and vasodilation, which is the widening and the shortening of the blood cells during exercise and during rest. Lung volumes and breathing control. So we'll start with the mouth, also known as the nasal cavity. The function of this system is to warm, filter, and moisten the incoming air. This is the start of the process. It goes in through here and down through the lungs eventually. Like I said earlier on the purpose games, the little hairs inside the nose help stop any infections possibly coming into the human body. It's the first line of defense. The pharynx, which is also known as the throat, which divides into the trachea, which is also known as the windpipe, and the esophagus, also known as the food pipe. There's also a small flap of cartilage called the epiglottis, which prevents food from entering the trachea. However, it can also get into the esophagus, and that's why some people, when they say, have you drunk it down, has it gone down the wrong hole? That is where this term comes from. Next is the larynx, also known as the voice box. As this is where sound is generated, it also helps protect the trachea by producing a strong reflex of solid objects should anything enter. There's small rings of cartilage which surround the bronchi, whose walls also consist of smooth muscle. Once inside the lung, the bronchi split several ways, forming tertiary bronchi. Next is the bronchioles. Tertiary bronchi continue to divide and become bronchioles, which are also very narrow tubes, less than a millimetre in diameter. There's no cartilage within the bronchioles, and they lead to the alveolar sacs. Next is alveoli. Individual hollow cavities contained within alveolar sacs or ducts. Alveoli have very thin walls which permit the exchange of gases, which are oxygen and carbon dioxide. They're surrounded by a network of capillaries, also into which the inspired gases pass. There are approximately 3 million alveoli within the average adult lung. Next is the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a broad band of muscles which sits underneath the lungs, attaching to the lower ribs, to the sternum and lumbar spine, forming the base of the thoracic cavity. Breathing, which is the action of breathing in and out, is due to changes of pressure within the thorax. This comparison with the outside, the action is also known as external respiration. When we inhale, the intercostal muscles between the ribs and the diaphragm contract and expand the chest cavity. The diaphragm flattens and moves downwards, and the intercostal muscles move the rib cage upwards and out. The increase in size decreases the internal air pressure until the air from the outside, which is now at a higher pressure, that inside the thorax, rushes into the lungs and equalizes the pressure. When we inhale, the diaphragm and intercostal muscles relax and return to their resting positions. This reduces the size of the thoracic cavity, thereby increasing the pressure and forcing air out of the lungs. Next is breathing rate. The rate with which we inhale is controlled by the respiratory center within the medulla oblongata in the brain, which Inspiration occurs due to the increased firing of inspiratory nerves as an increased recruitment of more motor neurons within the intercostal and diaphragm. Exhalation occurs due to a sudden drop of impulses along the inspiratory nerves. Our lungs are prevented from excess inspiration due to the stretch receptors within the bronchi and the bronchioles, which send impulses to the medulla oblongata when stimulated. Breathing rate is controlled by chemoreceptors within the main arteries, which monitor the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide within the blood. If oxygen saturation falls, ventilation accelerates to increase the volume of oxygen inspired. If levels of carbon dioxide increase, a substance known as carbonic acid is released into the blood, which causes hydrogen ions to be formed. An increase in concentration of hydrogen ions in the blood stimulates increased ventilation rates. This occurs when lactic acid is released into the blood following high intensity exercise. Next is respiratory volumes, where the amount of air inhaled and exhaled stored within the lungs at any given time. Tidal volume is the amount of air which enters the lungs during normal inhalation at rest. Average tidal volume is 500 milliliters. The same amount leaves the lungs during exhalation. Inspiratory reserve volume, which is the amount of extra air inhaled during a deep breath. This can be as high as 3,000 milliliters. Expiratory reserve volume, which is the amount of extra air inhaled during a forceful breath out. Residual volume, which is the air left in the lungs following maximal exhalation. There's always some air remaining to prevent lungs from collapsing. Vital capacity. Most air you can inhale after taking the deepest breath you can. It can be up to 10 times more than you would normally exhale. And total lung capacity This is a vital lung capacity plus the residual volume is the total amount of air the lungs can hold. The average lung capacity is 6,000 millilitres, although this varies with age, height, sex and your health. Now, gaseous exchange in the lungs. The main function of the respiratory system is gaseous exchange. This refers to the process of oxygen and carbon dioxide moving between the lungs and the blood. Diffusion occurs when molecules move from an area to a high concentration of that molecule to an area of low concentration. This occurs during gaseous exchange as the blood and the capillaries surround the alveoli, which has a lower oxygen concentration of oxygen than the air in the alveoli, which has just been inhaled. Both alveoli capillaries have walls which are only 1 cell thick, allow gases to diffuse across them. This happens with carbon dioxide. The blood in the surrounding capillaries has a higher concentration of carbon dioxide than that inspired air due to it being a waste product of any energy production. Therefore, carbon dioxide diffuses the other way from the capillaries to the alveoli where it can be exhaled. Next is VO2 max. VO2 max is a measure of peak oxygen you can consume and use in a minute. It is measured in millilitres, kilos, minutes. So you can see this is all relative to your body weight. We already know oxygen is needed to produce energy. The harder you exercise, the more oxygen you need to produce sufficient energy. However, your body has a maximum level where oxygen utilization is at its peak. If exercise intensity increases beyond this production, then the anaerobic energy systems must be used to supply additional energy. However, anaerobic metabolism produces lactic acid, which causes fatigue, which cannot be sustained. Your VO2 max can be increased during strength training, causes adaptations within the cardiovascular, respiratory, and muscular systems, which will increase the process of gas exchange.